Well, today I wanted to talk about doggy style.
Oh my goodness.
Well, you'd mentioned certain things about how you'd had particular lovers that were more inclined, and not them being more inclined, but actually that you were more inclined to have them in different positions based off of their anatomical structure, the size of their penis, the shape of it, the curve, etc. And I thought, yeah, let's go ahead and talk about doggy style, talk about, what it is, and not just like in the traditional sense of a person bent on their knees and another person behind them, but also to like what to navigate so that this can become pleasurable for everybody. And why would someone even want to be able to explore that?
Okay. So you kind of already said what it is, but could you say it again?
So doggy style in the sort of traditional sense is literally what you see dogs, how they have sex. You have someone that's on all fours on the receiving side, and then someone is behind them, typically hands kind of up on their hips and maybe knees on the ground, or maybe they're even standing or something. And the other person is just bent over in front of them, and then they are moving in and out from behind.
Okay.
Pumping away with the hips.
Jeez. That could be donkey style too.
Well, it is how a lot of animals have sex.
Yes. Makes sense. Well then, is doggy style for everybody? Can we all do it?
Well, there's a reason why I think a lot of people will try and avoid it. But yes, in general, like doggy style can be for everybody. Now, some people were like, no, I've never had a good experience, so it's definitely not for me. Well, I think if we talk about where things go off, why people are inclined to it or not, then we'll be able to start to find actual like biomechanical solutions as well as emotional solutions. Because, in general, what the traditional answer would be is like, who is doggy style for? Okay, it's for those who don't want to have maybe as much intimacy during a sexual experience because there's no eye contact. They also aren't really having their bodies necessarily pressed together. Someone who, on the positive side, is wanting like a very animalistic, more sort of lusty-like experience. And all of those reasons, depending on where you sit on the debate, would be either pros or cons for doing this.
Okay.
Now, for yourself, have you found it that doggy style can actually be intimate?
Oh, absolutely. But it usually, it's because there's already an established intimacy. And then maybe partway through the detached version, there's a coming of the adaptive giver kind of leaning in, so feeling more the belly against the back, and then maybe leaning in so much that their whole chest front area is actually against my back, and one arm might be even scooping the front of my body, and maybe they're breathing into my neck, so that feels it's very sexy too. It's not just intimate.
Well, let's talk then about some of the pros and cons in terms of doggy style.
Yeah, well, I think if it's done wrong, which it's done wrong a lot, it can really hurt. If you have a cervix, it's not a fun position because as soon as you arch your back, you're exposing the cervix a lot more. Yeah. So often if I was with a lover that wasn't skilled, that didn't understand, say, depth and rhythm and attunement, and it just takes one hit of that cervix and you're done. It's like so painful. So I would kind of preemptively squeeze shut my upper part of my vaginal area, and then I would arch or not arch dependent on what was going on to make less available that part. So I figured that out just on my own without any instruction of, if I squeeze shut and kind of like do a less of an arch, I can control where the penis is going more, and then they can't hurt me.
Which for a lot of people, that's like sounds quite advanced. Like, how do you squeeze shut the upper part of the vagina? But we're going to be going into, when we get into the members area, because there is a members area of this, we'll really dive deep into the hows of making the most out of this.
Exactly.
But, now, so you've talked about some of the different cons that are there, especially on the receiver side.
Yeah.
I think another one that a lot of people will run into is they think, okay, this can only be done with certain like sizes of a penis. If the penis is too long, especially because what you're talking about, like with the depth, then it's like, no, we don't do this because it's always going to end up going too deep because the person's going to slam into me too much. I think
we also had someone once write in about the problem with the micro penis, and it kept falling out.
Yes.
And they wanted help being able to do this particular position.
So again, the other part of it is that there's like seems like to be like this specific range where then the penis isn't going to be falling in or out.
Yeah.
Another one of the cons which we talked about is that some people feel that there's just not enough connection or intimacy.
It's not very romantic. They feel used. A lot of women end up like feeling they just kind of go through the motions. I remember someone I knew who married for money. She didn't find her partner attractive. And she said, I just, get in all fours, close my eyes, and kind of bear through it. And I'm like, that's awful. But I do think that that's common, that people, that is a position where your facial expressions are hidden. So if you're not really liking it or you're bored, it's hard to tell facially.
Well, that's funny because I've also heard that as a pro, that it's like, okay, well, I am married to my partner. I like them. I do want to have sex. They really like that. And I just don't want to feel as much connection
you want it to
in
be a
sex.
bit wilder.
Or even it was, no, I really like having sex with them. And this is what it was, that they didn't like the faces that their partner made during sex. And so they wanted them to be able to go wild and do all of that. But they just didn't.
In a pillow?
But they didn't know. Well, this was on the receiver side. This is the person that was like getting fucked. They were like, I like being fucked. I like that he's having pleasure, but I just don't want to see his face while he's doing it because he makes all these faces.
I have to say I did have an experience like that once where the person was contorting his face so intensely that he looked angry and scary. And I'm like, and he was doing really weird things with his tongue because I think he was focusing. And I'm like, this isn't very attractive. And so...
You're
closing my eyes and putting something over my own face.
I hope everything else was good enough that it made you want to continue.
No, I think that was one of the people I sent home.
Oh, okay. That was a one-off and done type of situations.
But there are pros. There are things that are really lovely about it. And one of them you did mention, it has this edginess, a spice to it. It's a bit spicy. There's stronger sounds almost of like belly to butt, that kind of like
the clapping.
I really like that. And then if it's a heterosexual combo, the slapping of the balls against the vulva into the clit is so hot. I'm like, did nature design that intentionally? Because it's very stimulating of the clitoris without any manual touching.
Well, and even if it was homosexual sex, the testicles would still be stimulating the other person's perineum and testicles with the flap-a-dap-dap.
Yeah, so there's an interesting design there. And then the other part that I really like is there is a dominant submission energy, or can be, where my upper back can get like pushed on so that my whole chest is then down and into the bed, and there's something really hot about like being pinned down but my butt's up in the air.
Also that vulnerability, I guess, is what you're feeling there. And when we speak in other episodes, talk about mental arousal, I mean, that definitely that power dynamic is there. There's also that taboo-ness that is there. This like, this isn't really supposed to be having this. Is like kind of naughty to be doing this and just be being animalistic about it.
Another pro that I really like is spontaneity. So if I'm wearing a skirt, no panties, it's much easier in a public place, not super public, but like out in a park or like not in front of people, but still out of the house, to kind of bend over a rock and have some fun that way.
It reminds me of the what's that song, the "You and Me, baby, ain't nothing but animals, so let's do it like we do on the Discovery Channel."
Something like that. But I do like have some fond memories of outdoor, being bent over either tree stumps or rocks.
Well, another part of it too is since you're not actually seeing when the person's entering you,
Yeah.
there can also be a huge factor of anticipation
Yeah.
that's being built up because you're like, oh, like, is it coming in? Is it entering? Like, you can't really look, you know?
Yeah. I think also, maybe it's just my thing, but
Uh-huh.
I find it really edgy and kinky to have someone lick me in that position
Mm-hmm.
from behind. I'm like, wow, I can't even believe you're doing that because it seems very animal.
Uh-huh.
And then the penetration after that is like very electric. So I don't know if it's just my brain, but
Well, I mean,
it is a pro of that position. Is I don't know what they're going to do. I don't know what part of their body they're going to use,
Yes.
whether it's mouth, fingers, or anything else.
so literally all of these things, we could almost say them either as all of the things we listed are either a pro or a con for one person.
Depending on
or
who you
another.
are. Yeah, exactly.
Now, one of and this kind of gets into like who is it for,
Yeah.
is I've noticed that there is a tendency based off of a person's kind of default attachment style
Yes.
where they will either lean in towards this or lean away from it.
For some people, this is the only position they can have sex in. And I found that in my experience, if that's the only position, there tends to be like this aversion to any front eye looking, kissing, or any kind of belly chest connection. There's the discomfort with that.
Yes. Well, I mean, so before we go into that, maybe then just to mention, in terms of if you are a person that has like kind of anxiety or tension in this area, like to be taken from behind can increase that. So that's one thing that can make it more difficult. If also too, then if you are a woman and the positioning of your cervix, where most cervixes are angled a particular way, but some people actually have the
Introverted.
precisely the uterus turned the other way, and so then the cervix is at a different angle. That will have a tendency to make penetration from behind be more painful for that.
If it's not done skillfully.
However,
that's the caveat here.
precisely.
Yeah.
Once you learn to do these things skillfully, all of a sudden things that actually were very edgy and would create anxiety or create pain can just then become this whole new experience of possibility.
I have to say that you don't understand this
Your eyes
personally
are getting a
because,
little bit glassy when you're about to say this.
well, if you have a menstrual cycle, if
Uh-huh.
you're in a fertility cycle of a time of life,
Yes.
right before the period, the 24 hours before, all my partners knew I was about to bleed because I wanted animal sex. I wanted
Yes.
something intense and like lots of screaming and butt slapping, and usually from behind was much more what my body wanted. It was like a body need for that impact. And it was the one time of month I could tolerate even lack of skill. It was just something hormonally was going on where sensation was changed for me. So I don't know if that's true for everybody, but definitely have heard other women say the same.
Well, I've kind of noticed it going both ways, because I've also noticed it too, like some women before ovulation really want then that animalistic sex, because then it's like all about like getting impregnated. Whereas for sex right before menstruation, I've noticed the pattern typically is that if you know that sex can help you have a more easeful period versus no sex during period because it's just going to create more pain, and your body knows that actually getting everything quote unquote, I don't like to say the word loosened up because most people think then that means like the vagina becomes
Relaxed,
flappy,
more relaxed.
but a release of tension from that area is going to then bring on the period, create an easier menstrual cycle, easier blood flow, etc. Then I will typically hear what you said is like, yes, bring it on, give it to
Really,
me.
I never associated sex before my period with pain-free periods, but I wasn't really having painful periods anyways. But it was definitely, if you don't take me now and like rough me up a little bit, I'm going to bite you, like that kind of
Well,
space.
but if everything is starting to get more blood flow and that tension is starting to go there, the fact that you would do it would be likely the reason also why then
Correct.
you're not
so
having
maybe
it.
unconsciously, but there was not a
Precisely,
conscious
exactly.
part.
That's why I was saying I noticed this kind of trait.
Yeah.
It wasn't something that was actually brought to me then for that. Though I do know of women that specifically will like to have sex during a period, and though even to the point they're like, "You're a guy, I don't really want to have anything else, but like you're my period sex person because I know that this is going to help me with it, and it's not about love. It's like just, can you give me this service, man?
Yeah,
like, you know,
exactly.
or person with a strap on, or whatever it might be.
Exactly. Well, in terms of kind of going back to the cons briefly, and I know you're going to talk probably more about this in the explicit side.
Well, I want to talk about the attachment part still.
Okay,
go ahead.
But I just wanted to, in terms of body positions, you know, how I was saying earlier, the squeezing of the vagina and the moving of the back.
Yeah.
I have an ex-partner who was kind of complaining about what he liked about me. He's like, oh, you arch your back so much. And he thought it was really amazing because his partner before me...
And by arching the back, meaning like, if this is the body and this is here the butt, it's leaning up this direction.
So the lordosis
versus
is increased.
Curving away
the C-shape
from
of
the person.
Like a cat
Yes.
stretch. Yeah, so more of a cow. So he would say that she would really do a cat, like really push her lower back
Yes.
toward him instead of away from him. And he didn't like the look of it. And I'm imagining for her, maybe there was pain or discomfort or something that she was... And so he also wasn't enjoying it because she probably tried to imitate enjoyment but wasn't really enjoying it.
Well, we'll get into some of the signs of when a person isn't enjoying it, but I want to first draw out this
Attachment.
Yeah, with attachments, is that in general those who, and it need to be an understanding too that attachment styles are more of a place where a person is at. As opposed to this is something that defines you forever. I know this flies in the face of conditioned attachment theory,
Yes.
which is that you are
what you are.
Well, that you basically get formed in the younger years and then it doesn't change. Where
Right.
they have found with, yes, there is a tendency for that to follow into adult attachment styles. And, you know, this is something that I wrote my thesis on and dove into quite deeply. And yes, so Bowlesby and Ainsworth are looking at it in infancy and attachment with parents, and then later Hazan and Shaver were looking at how it went into adult romantic attachment. Now, part of the work that we're doing is also helping people have the ability to repattern their attachment style.
And be more fluid because I know that at certain times of my life, when I say was single and very horny, then my attachment style was definitely avoidant, meaning I did not want to know anything about your life. I just wanted
Sometimes
the
not
sex
even
part.
the name.
Yeah, sometimes I didn't even care if I knew the name. And then other times, like when I'm in love, I am the most loyal person and I want to know everything. And there's a
Well,
very
I also
deep-
want to say that too about that loyalty part
Yeah.
is that you were loyal to that moment in the sense that you would typically tell a person, this is something I thought was quite unique about you, is that you'd say, look, there's going to be a beginning to this, there's going to be a middle, and there's going to be an end. And I don't want a relationship after it. I don't need like the, hey, how are you doing call after. Like,
Yeah.
So in that sense, you like were very clear.
What was I going to
on
eat
what
at a
you were doing.
restaurant that I didn't eat at before? And there's a server who's serving me for the time that I'm there and I'm having a great meal. But I don't need that server to call me the next day and like see like how I digested the meal and did it move through okay and do I have energy or not? Like, no.
And when are you coming back to eat again?
Yeah, no. And if they did, I'd be like, ew, I'm not going back there. Because there's something about having a really delicious experience that's free from all this inquiry and follow-up. And that's different, of course, than a devoted...
So that would be the avoidant times.
The
But
avoidant
then
times.
The more anxious times, which again, when you put them as attachment styles,
Yeah.
they're always listed as a negative.
Yeah.
So avoidance bad, anxious is bad,
I didn't think
secure
it
is
was
good.
bad. I was like, hey, I'm just
Well,
want
this
to
is
have
the
my
thing.
fun. And
If you start to look, avoidant becomes a struggle and a difficulty and a challenge if that means that then that's the only way you can have a relationship.
Correct.
And you actually want to have a closer relationship
yeah.
that could be good for you, but you're incapable of it, and so then you always have to pull away.
I think I'm pretty securely attached if I look at how they define that and how my childhood was. I loved my parents. We had so much fun together, but when they would leave for an event, I'm like, adios. I'm gonna have, like, I was very happy to do my own thing. And then when they came back, I was super happy to see them.
Precisely.
There was never a stress there.
So again, and I mean, out of the plus 1,000 papers that I reviewed to write my thesis, there was very few that were written actually on, well, what is secure attachment, other than that it was not avoidant and not
exactly.
anxious, or anxious ambivalent if you're going to complicate it, even bring in more. But this is the point, is that the way that I started to really understand how secure attachment works means that you have that flexibility to go into this animalistic, what could be labeled more avoidant type of sex, and just get into the carnal desires of flesh and just being able to, take one's pleasure, or just to give pure amount of pleasure, where there isn't then as much of the eye gazing and like the romantic feelings. And essentially we're two bodies here generating a lot of pleasure, whereas then the anxious, or another way of actually saying it nicely, is that the romantic side of sex is where you're like really bringing the bodies and having this oneness experience.
Yeah.
So that being said,
With doggy style,
typically those of the romantic inclination or anxious inclination are not going to head, and this is again a generality, but they will shy away from the doggy style because, again, they want to feel the
that
oneness
probably
and
makes
have
them
it
feel a
affirmed.
bit anxious.
Yeah.
Because a lot of times when women share with me that it's not nice, and I inquire into it, then there's this sensation of, I'm just being used because he's horny.
Yeah.
And I was like,
Literally, when you hear the phrase "hit it and quit it,"
yeah,
you think of doggy style.
yeah, exactly. Okay.
Well, but then the other side, though, is those who are avoidant will really like it because, I mean, it's the
satisfies all the bits.
satisfies it. You don't have to emotionally engage with the other person. And so one of the things that you can actually do with doggy style, and the way that we talk about it, is that doggy style, as opposed to looking at it that the chests are apart, one person's bent over, one person's more erect, is that doggy style, or sex from behind, is literally where the front side is facing the back side of the receiver. So the back side of the receiver is there, and then you have the front side of the giver in the experience. And typically the difference between that and, let's say, like a reverse cowgirl, is that the receiver's lower in relation to position. Now, the reason why I think it's important to be able to kind of broaden that definition is now you have a variety of ways that you can be in doggy style and actually bring the chest closer or further away to start to actually titrate and do some pendulation, where you are going back and forth between, okay, yes, someone who's anxious and then needs the intimacy can have that in it, but then start to experiment and develop a more robust nervous system and some more flexibility in their actual attachment style, start to repattern that by actually having some more of that chest to back separation, where someone who is always avoidant could start off with more of the separation and then gradually start to actually bring themselves closer together.
Sex as a way to repattern
The
how
relational
we
framework.
connect with ourselves, with another
Precisely.
person. I'm really excited about the explicit part of this because I want to get into. There are many details actually how to do this in a way that just feels great for everybody and doesn't matter the height difference, the size difference, whether you're a plus size or a tiny size, or we have a lot of those questions that come in.
Some of the things I think that would be really good before we switch over for everybody to know is, like, what are some of the signs that you notice in yourself when it's actually going wrong, and you shouldn't just bear through it, and you should actually communicate to the person, stop, shift, something.
Well, the first part is when someone just rams into me. So there isn't a pause or any kind of skillful, like, making the labia aware that something's about to happen. It's just like a plunge. That's a no-go for me.
Well, and that...
I can't trust where they're going to stop.
And even if you're a person who's like, well, but I love the spontaneity of, like, being taken, like, quickly, I think what you're speaking about, though, is a matter of the depth.
Yeah.
And that there's, like, this feeling. So regardless of where, like, how long the other person is, what the depth is or whatever, if you're noticing that you get this feeling as if, like, you're going to throw up or your guts have been hit.
Or just like pure piercing agony, because that's what it feels like when something hits the cervix.
And, I mean, so that feeling, how would you describe that feeling of agony?
Oh, it's like a hot knife just like piercing you.
Okay, so it's like this hot stabbing feeling.
Yeah.
Okay. On top of that, typically then you also mention that the body starts to curl in.
Yeah, so and I notice that in myself when I have maybe a little gut inflammation and things are a little more tender, then I'm like, oh, look, I'm not really doing lordosis now. I'm actually flattening out my back a little bit. And there's an intelligence to that, but if the giver isn't sensitive and adaptive to the signals, then it can start going in the bad direction. But if they are sensitive, then you can actually probably support the body to open more.
Oh, and based off of one's menstrual cycle as well, that the cervix and the womb are going to lower and raise. But across all bodies, though, whether it's heterosexual doggy style, homosexual doggy style, whichever way you want to put it, if you notice that, this is from the giver's side, the other person is sort of curling in and literally like scooting away from you, get away, even if they're saying yes, continue with that, notice that this would be a place to actually start to, that their body is actually saying no. And if you are on the receiving side of it and you're noticing that you're curling in and kind of bracing for it, then you'll actually be better served to communicate and find a way, which we'll get into in the members area, about how to actually relax and open oneself up to that experience. And so it's just really worth noting that having that ability to tell the person, no, this doesn't feel right, and let's try and do this instead, is going to be that first step to actually not building a history of bad reputation with doggy style, because the more that continues, then it likely will just start to become something that you actually are going to be avoiding and dislike, and for good reason, because it's not leading towards a pleasurable experience. Well,
in our Embodied Love University, I know that we made a lot of little mini Section 6 videos if they were featured in social media, but it really created positive and negative reactions.
I mean, like millions of views and things like that.
It's close on position instruction, but this one was quite popular, the doggy style one, because people. It was
titled "Howling at the Moon."
Because people could see through example how you were holding your body, how I was holding my body, and the adjustments we were making. So in the Embodied Love University, for those of you where you have this free membership, those videos are accessible in that membership. So
and we also have a penetration protocol. It's 9 dates, and that is an amazing course that literally allows you to be able to explore any position and really understand the internal as well as external mechanics that are going to make it an excellent time for the both of you. So definitely check that out. And without further ado, let's go ahead and get into the member section.
Awesome. To join us for the complete and explicit version of this podcast, just simply upgrade your membership and you'll get instant access.